So here's chapter 13, the 80s. And in this time period, right after the 70s, there was an 11% drop in sales. The first time in 30 years, music is actually being hit by the recession of the time. The recovery is because of those guys, right? They're listed, the superstars: Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, Bruce Springsteen, Houston, Phil Collins, and Janet Jackson, which you probably know at least most of those. In this time period, technologically, for the first time in 1984, cassettes became more popular than vinyl, and frankly, so was copying. Everybody made copies of, their cassettes and mixtapes and gave them to their friends. The first CD was sold in 1983. Yeah, it's that far back. Probably the most important thing of this era, and it's definitely a test question, is when did MTV start? And that was in 1981, August of 1981. Super important, which pretty much, we've always had videos before then, and people have enjoyed seeing performers along with hearing them, but MTV pretty much solidified that entire idea. The very first video, you ask, I can hear, was a video called "Video Killed the Radio Star." And if you haven't seen it, you should give it a watch. It's real fun. Pretty much, though, much like it normally is, MTV was all white for the longest time until Michael Jackson's Thriller, one of the most important videos and songs, and performers for that matter, of all rock and roll. So it was Michael Jackson that finally got a non-white video on to MTV. This also sparked the second British invasion. The first British invasion is like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. We had a second invasion in the 80s with that list of singers: the Eurythmics, Flock of Seagulls, Adam Ant, Billy Idol, Thomas Dolby. Again, if you don't know those guys, take a listen to them. Some of them are on the listening list, and they are very reflective of the time. I would say one of the biggest things about the 1980s is digital technology. We're starting to go towards CDs. Synthesizers are becoming digital. And if you want to read a lot about that, I believe around page 454, there's a lot about this technology coming up. There's a large YouTube section in this chapter. It should be listed in your notes somewhere, or you can YouTube most of it, the links. Thriller had the highest production values of this decade, and for many, many reasons, and especially because of all the good songs on it, is still considered one of the best albums of all time. Born in the USA, with Bruce Springsteen, this had a different audience because Bruce kind of became popular because of his attention to the hard-working class origins that he had. It kind of harkens to an earlier feel, almost to the 50s. Very sincere. Right now, Bruce Springsteen's much older, and he's on Broadway in New York doing basically his biography as a musical. Very expensive tickets. It's still running from this point on. And again, it's just kind of a retrospective of his life. Graceland won the Grammy for the year it came out, and it's a little different, but it shows this growing interest in world music. A lot of it was recorded in South Africa. This was a time where they were having many political issues and boycotts, apartheid, and this whole album focused on collaboration. They had Zydeco bands, but others like Los Lobos and Linda Ronstadt, Ladysmith, Black Mambazo, all sorts of stuff. But again, the primary thing was the fact that it had a lot of attention towards world music. The book then does have a small section on Broadway music at this time, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. It goes on about Cats, Evita, Phantom, Les Mis, actually musicals that have been turned into movies recently. Then the book also goes into a large section over Prince and Madonna. Of course, Prince just recently died, so that was kind of a difficult chapter sometimes for some people to read, but it's fascinating. There'll be some test questions about Madonna, her influence, and her life, so take a read on that, and on Prince too. They both have very fascinating lifestyles. and there's some things like with Madonna, she did write and co-write her early songs, very much into dance and kind of set up the popular dance movement of the time. She was very much in control of what she wanted to do. She had producers though, but again, it was under her guidance. Did some movies, married to Sean Penn, did a book that was considered very controversial. A lot of things. And then she actually did a Broadway musical, Evita, which was actually quite good. Everybody knows her name, whether you like her or not. Same thing with Prince. Actually comes from a middle-class family in Minnesota. Dad played in a jazz band. Biggest movie and album probably was Purple Rain. And I bet you know a bunch of it about him, even if you don't read the book. He wrote over 75 songs a year, wrote for many other musicians trying to help their careers also, including Apollonia 6, Sheila E. Something of note with Prince that's kind of fun, it's because of his music, and partially Madonna's too, that the first parental warning labels were created. Whenever you see something like on Spotify or something that says explicit, this started with these two guys because they were explicit. They had some stuff that was considered way too racy for kids, and so that labeling system became, well, regular and normal, even to today. And that was pretty much the 80s, which is a shame because I wish the book had gone more into the hair bands of the 80s, like glam rock like Motley Crue, Poison, Def Leppard, Kiss, of all things, Ozzy, even Bon Jovi. It's not in there. It's a shame. And that was chapter 13.